So he said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So it says, Asim ibn Umar ibn Qatada, on the authority of a trustworthy informant from Umar ibn Abdulaziz ibn Marwan, said that he was told that. So here we have a number of problems. Number one, we don't know who this person is. Umar ibn Abdulaziz ibn Marwan, yes, reliable, known person. And then he says he was told that. We don't know. So again, it's a story, right? Um, the Persian told the apostle that his master in Amuriya told him to go to a certain place in Syria where there was a man who lived between two thickets. Every year, as he used to go from one to the other, the sick used to stand in his way, and everyone was prayed for. Everyone he prayed for was healed. He ask him about his religion, which you seek, for he can tell you of it. So I went on until I came to the place I had been told of, and I found that people had gathered there with their sick until he came out to them at night, passing from one thicket to the other. The people came to him with their sick, and everyone he prayed for was healed. They prevented me from getting to him so that I could not approach him until he entered the thicket he was making for. But I took hold of his shoulder. He asked me who I was, and he turned to me and I said, God have mercy on you. Tell me about the Hanifiya, the religion of Abraham. He replied, You are asking about something men do not inquire about today. The time has come near when a prophet will be sent this religion from the people of the Haram. Go to him, for he will bring you to it. Then he went into the thicket. The apostle said to Salman, if you have told me the truth, if you have told me the truth, you met Jesus, son of Mary. What's problematic with this statement?
Which part exactly?
So there's the story. Basically, he was told he's basically filling in more details, okay? And he's saying that when I left Persia, I was sent to the Levant, Syria, and I was told find this person who lives between these two thickets, and basically he would come out and cure people, okay? So then at the end, it says the Prophet ﷺ, the apostle, the messenger of Allah ﷺ, said to Salman, if you have told me the truth, you met Jesus, the son of Mary. What's problematic here?
The timeline.
So what's wrong with the timeline?
It wouldn't be possible for him to meet Isa alayhi salam
Why?
because he's with Allah.
Okay, so that's right. So as far as we know, the timeline is like that. There's a huge gap from when when Sayyidina Isa, he didn't die, of course, but when he went to Allah or etc. Right? And so that wouldn't make any sense. So now someone comes along, reads this quote, and says, "Look, Muslims have no clue because they claim that Jesus was alive near the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And look, they say this. So what's your objection to that?" So somebody reads this, they're like, yeah, of course, Muslims, they have all these like anachronisms and they don't make sense. And look, they're claiming that basically one of the disciples of Prophet Muhammad was also a disciple of Jesus, which doesn't make any sense. So how would you object to that, given the strength of this source? How
But we,
strong is this source? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that we don't take this for, the absolute truth
Yeah. So
because there's
so so
doubt.
it's for a Christian, they don't know any of that. They read this book and they're like, okay, there's this so and so, Alfred Guillaume, some priest, wrote this book, and yeah, it's a nice book, but look, these Christians, these Muslims are crazy. They don't know how we read this book. So we look at this book as like, as we mentioned, Asim ibn Umar al-Qatada said on somebody that he trusts, I don't know who that is, from Umar ibn Abdulaziz, who said that he was told. Who told him that? Umar ibn Abdulaziz did not meet Salman al-Farisi. So I don't know what's going on. And so it's just a nice story. These are all just stories. Even the whole story of Salman al-Farisi is just a story. It doesn't have to be true. So you can't hold me to something that's just a story. So this is how Christianity fell apart. If they looked at the Bible, they don't divide I know from I think to I doubt. They just, all of it's true. God preserved all of it. Modern science comes along, shows that the world is definitely not 5,000 years old or whatever, and then Christianity is false. The way that we would interact with it is to say, look, it's just a story, right? The whole of the Bible is just a story. There's no source for any of it. SubhanAllah, yesterday, the day before, I was with my kids and we were doing the hadith. The Prophet said, وَحَدِّثُوا عَنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ وَلَا حَرَجْ. Quote the stories of the Jews and it's okay. So then I showed them, I said, look, here's a hadith book. Open up any hadith. Number one, it has a chain transmission. Number two, I can look up those people. And I showed them, look, I can open up this book, look up this book. And I showed them, look, most hadith are criticized and most hadiths are not reliable. We don't rely on most of our tradition. We are very self-critical. So then I had the King James Bible. So then I started reading the King James Bible. And I'm like, find me a story and find me its source. There's no source, right? The King James Bible does not begin with a source. It doesn't say this so-and-so from so-and-so from so-and-so. We don't have that. There's no source for any of the stories. It's just a story, right? It might be true, might not be true. So when you have this tripartite thing, story, it's a bit more than that because there's things like it's more like 5 levels. You can be like, I know it's true, or I know it's false, right? That's like 2 sides of it. And then I think it's true, and I think it's false, and then I don't know. It may be true, maybe false. So it's kind of like that's like 5 things. So imagine if you see things in 5 colors as opposed to black and white. You know what I'm saying? That's the glasses that Muslims wear. I read a hadith and I know that it's false. I read a hadith and I think that it's false. I read a hadith and it may or may not be true. I don't know, not sure. I read a hadith and it's likely to be true. And I read a hadith that is definitely true. So like in this hadith collection that we were doing with the kids, the second hadith was like this. That the Prophet said, "Man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maq'adahu min nar." Whoever lies about me intentionally, let him take his seat in the hellfire. So that hadith narrated by at least 72 of the Sahaba. So the chain transmission is very different to this, right? The chain transmission is like 72 people teaching at least 72 other people. So that's mutawatir. That's impossible. The Prophet didn't say that, right? So things are very, very different. There are things that may be true, the things that are definitely true, the things that are most likely true. There are things that are most likely not true, and there are things that are definitely not true, right? And so here, this is what we would do: say, look, there's a weak chain of transmission that apparently the Prophet ﷺ said, if that person spoke the truth, then you saw Jesus. And we're going to say, look, we all know that Jesus ﷺ left this world as we know it ages ago. And so obviously it doesn't make any sense. Simple as that. And the muhaddithin will do that all the time. They're like, yeah, this hadith doesn't make sense because look, it's anachronisms or whatever. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we have to, we have to understand that. When you let's say a non-Muslim is reading, for example, Martin Ling's, Life of Muhammad, they won't see that. They won't know that difference. And this whole way of thinking, it sounds like it's like some kind of like a new way of thinking. It's not. That's just how Muslims have done things. That's how we've critiqued ourselves. So the key thing with this Christianity did not critique itself, right? Whereas it's Muslims critique them ourselves. So then modern scholars come along, non-Muslims are like, okay, we should review stuff. We've already reviewed everything. Every single problem that you can come up with, we've already thought about. Like we are very critical of ourselves. Does that make sense? Okay, 4 men who broke with polytheism. One day when the Quraysh had assembled on a feast day to venerate and circumambulate their idol to which they offered sacrifices, this being a feast which they held annually, 4 men drew apart secretly and agreed to keep their counsel in the bonds of friendship. They were Waraqa ibn Nawfal, ibn Asad, ibn Abdul Uzza, ibn Qusay, ibn Kilab, ibn Murra, ibn Ka'b, ibn Lu'ay. Right? So Waraqa ibn Nawfal is ultimately related to the Prophet ﷺ. Ubaidullah ibn Jahsh. So in the other class, we're talking about funny names. Does anybody know what Jahsh means? Oh, Yusuf, right? You know what I'm talking about funny names? Like what was the person's name?
Ibn Jinni.
Yeah, Ibn Jinni. So he's called Ibn Jahsh. Jahsh is like an insult. So Jahsh is it's not Himar. Jahsh is like useless Himar. So Jahsh is a baby donkey. So not only a donkey, you are a useless donkey. So why is he called Ubaidullah ibn Jahsh? You know? No idea.
Like self-deprecating humor. I don't know.
I have no idea. I'm totally lost in some. A lot many of these names like don't make sense. Allahu A'lam. Ibn Ri'ab, Ibn Ya'mar. He has Ya'mar. I'm not sure if it's actually Ya'mar or Ya'mur with a Dhamma here. I don't know. Ibn Sabra, Ibn Murra, Ibn Kabir, Ibn Ghanm, Ibn Dudan, Ibn Asad, Ibn Khuzaymah, whose mother was Umayma, which means little mama. Right? Umayma is little mama. Bint Abdul Muttalib. And Uthman ibn Huwayrith ibn Asad ibn Abdul Uzza ibn Qusay, and Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufail ibn Abdul Uzza ibn Abdullah ibn Qurt ibn Riyah ibn Razah ibn Adi ibn Ka'b ibn Luay. They were of the opinion that their people had corrupted the religion of their father Abraham, and that the stone they went around was of no account. It could neither hear, nor see, nor hurt, nor help. Find for yourselves a religion, they said, for by God you have none. You're not, this is a stupid religion you have. So they went their several ways in the land, seeking the Hanifiyya, the religion of Abraham. Waraqa attached himself to Christianity and studied its scriptures until he had thoroughly mastered them. Ubaidullah went on searching until Islam came. Then he migrated with the Muslims to Abyssinia, taking with him his wife, who was Muslim, Habiba. When he arrived there, he adopted Christianity, parted from Islam, and died a Christian in Abyssinia. Right? What we were talking about, Yusuf, in the previous class.
We talked about a lot of things.
That's
About
true. One thing was what about dying on Iman, right?
yeah.
So you can imagine, for example, Khalas, right? There's people who are not so religious. Ubaidullah, they're super religious. In the Jahiliyyah, he left shirk. He accepted the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For the sake of Allah, he did hijrah. And what he left the deen. So someone is like, yeah, I'm right. So Islam, or Allahumma, was the dua? ثبت قلبي على دينك. Right? Make my heart firm on your deen. Right? Because it's not guaranteed. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. You're not guaranteed to die on Iman. Right? That's pretty scary, right? Here's a Sahabi. Well, he's not a Sahabi, but he's somebody who was a Sahabi. It's pretty insane. Go ahead, Ubaid.
I was just wondering, like, what the linguistic difference is between saying the Ahnaf and the Hanifiyya.
I don't know. So today, today it's the same thing. When you say, for example, today, if you said Al-Ahnaf, you mean the Hanafi scholars.
Right.
And Hanafiya also means Hanafi scholars.
Right.
Yeah. Ash-Shafi'iyya. So sometimes they might say, for example, Ash-Shawafi', but usually say Ash-Shafi'iyya. So Iyya is also used for plural as well. Comes as well. Like basically, Torta marbuta. Like you say, for example, Al-Marra. Al-Marra is the plural of Mar. People, the passers-by. Right? People who pass by, Al-Marra. Yeah. So that's the term marbuta is sometimes used as a plural. Okay, anyway, that's what happened with him. Muhammad ibn Ja'far ibn Zubayr ibn Awam. right? So Zubayr ibn Awam. Actually, not sure who, I actually don't know which Ja'far this is. Muhammad ibn Ja'far ibn Zubayr. I don't know who this is. Told Ibn Ishaq, that when he had become a Christian, so he's not a Sahabi, not a Tabi'i. So how does he know? Get a gap in the chain. Ubaidullah, he became a Christian, Ubaidullah, as he passed the Prophet's companions who used to say, "We see clearly, but your eyes are only half open," i.e., we see, but you are only trying to see and cannot see. He used the word sa'a because when a puppy tries to open its eyes to see, it only half sees. And the other word, faqaha, with a ha, which means to open your eyes. After his death, the apostle married his widow Habiba. And so Habiba and who was it? Najashi himself paid the mahar for Habiba. Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Hussein. Who's this? Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Hussein ibn Ali. So this is Sayyidina Hussein, right? The grandson of the Prophet ﷺ, his son Ali, his son Muhammad, right? So our author Ibn Ishaq, right, in the middle of the second century, the end of the second century, he's studying with the great, great grandson of the Prophet ﷺ, right? And Ali ibn Hussein, he is like the grand teacher of Imam Malik. Yeah. And this is Ali as-Sajjad, right? He's also called Zain al-Abidin. This is called Zain. This is Zain al-Abidin. His laqab is Zain al-Abidin, right? Okay. Told me that the apostle sent Amr ibn Umayyah al-Damri to Negus, to Najashi, to ask for her, and he married him to her. So basically, the Prophet sent somebody, said, go to the ruler and have the ruler ask for her hand in marriage. He gave her as a dowry on the apostle's behalf 400 dinars. Muhammad ibn Ali said, we think that Abdul Malik ibn Marwan fixed the maximum dowry of women at 400 dinars because of this precedent. Right? So Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, the Khalifa, he fixed the maximum dowry of that, which is quite a lot of money, isn't it? So 400 dinars is, one second, is 20, it's like $100,000 now. It's like $100,000, quite a lot of money. So here, basically, she received, like, a king basically paid the mahar for her, right? The dowry of women at 400. So 20 dinars is the zakat minimum in gold, and that zakat minimum gold is like $5,000 or $6,000. Okay, that's 20 dinars. So times that by 20, right? $100,000 approximately or more. The man who handed her over to the Prophet ﷺ was Khalid ibn Sa'id ibn al-As. Uthman ibn al-Huwayrith went to the Byzantine emperor and became a Christian. He was given high office there. Zayd ibn Amr stayed as he was. He accepted neither Judaism nor Christianity. He abandoned the religion of his people and abstained from idols, animals that had died, blood, and things offered to idols. He forbade the killing of infant daughters, saying that he worshipped the God of Abraham. He publicly rebuked his people for this. So basically, he's saying, look, I don't know what I am. I don't know what I am, but I know that this is all wrong. Hisham ibn Urwa, right? This is Hisham ibn Urwa ibn Zubayr ibn Awam. Narrates from his father, Urwa ibn Zubayr, on the authority of his mother, Asma bint Abi Bakr, said that she saw Zayd as a very old man leaning on his back on the Kaaba and saying, O Quraysh, by him in whose hand is the soul of Zayd, no one of you follows the religion of Abraham but I. Right? So you're basically all claiming that you are following the way of Abraham, you're not. Then he said, O God, if I knew how you worshipped, how you wish to be worshipped, I would so worship you, but I do not know. Then he prostrated himself on the palms of his hands. So he didn't know how to, there's no, right? So he knows that this is wrong, but doesn't know how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? This is important. It tells us, right, that you can't find out furu, meaning the details of religion, cannot be found out with the mind alone. So the mind alone told him that this doesn't make sense. But you can't find out how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the mind alone, right? So, for example, is anybody from a culture where brothers marry sisters? Yusuf, in where you live in America, do brothers marry sisters? Is it quite a normal thing?
Not
Sara,
the rest.
Obaid, Sister Mahfash. No? Not normal, right? So if somebody married their sister, number one, probably be illegal. Is that correct? I don't know if it's illegal or not. I mean, if you can marry a same sex, then why can't you marry your sister? It's kind of a bit funny, right? Um, but anyway, so culturally, it's not normal to any of us that you should marry. Like incest, that'd be pretty weird. Like you kind of feel a bit odd, right? If you met this person, it's like, oh, you're married. Like you're in the airport talking to this guy, like, oh, nice kids. Yeah, my sister and I, we got married, 5 years ago. We have 3 kids, mashallah. Like, whoa, it'd be a bit weird, right?
Yeah.
All of us would find that really strange. But is it actually immoral innately? No, it's not. It's immoral because Allah has forbidden it, right? So there's many things that we might be like culturally like, oh, that's really weird, right? But like if Allah forbade eating chicken and told us to eat pork, then it would be good, right? So often in our minds we think like, oh, this like this. So you can with your mind alone you can work out the aqaid, like Allah is one, Allah is all powerful, Jesus is not God, this tree is not God. You can work out those things, but you can't work out the details of halal and haram. And even if many things seem right or seem wrong to you, you can't work that out really. Even for example, killing your daughter. So he said, oh, we shouldn't do that, right? So he's kind of like done his ijtihad, he's kind of worked it out. But if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, oh, well, given that you gave birth, this child came from you, I allow you to kill them if you want. Allah could do that. So it is not illogical. Infanticide is not immoral logically. It is immoral because Allah has forbidden it. Does that make sense? Things are bad because Allah has forbidden them, and things are good because Allah has allowed them, right? A vegetarian comes along, you guys are all murderers. Like, how is it okay to like murder an animal? You know? How is that okay? It has a point, right? Has a point. So how do we know it's okay to murder an animal? Allah's allowed us to do that. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says there's pros and cons, but there's more pros than cons. Okay. But it's not something that the mind can tell you. The mind cannot tell you that God has allowed people to eat meat. The mind can tell you that God exists, right? And that, etc. Right? But the rule, so he's saying like, I don't know how to watch. Does the mind tell you, oh, go around the Kaaba 7 times? It doesn't tell you that. He's like, yeah, Allah, I just know that there was something right here. I don't know what it was, and I know that this is wrong. That's all. Right? He says, I was told by his son, Sa'id ibn Zayd, and Umar ibn Khattab, whose I, presumably this is Asma saying, who was his nephew, said to the apostle, ought we to ask God's pardon for Zayd ibn Amir? He replied, yes, for he will be raised from the dead as the sole representative of a whole people. Right? This is a very interesting statement, right? So should we make dua for him? Right? And so presumably he, meaning what he basically left shirk before Islam. So they're asking the question, should we make dua for him? The answer is yes. For he will be raised from the dead as the sole representative of a people. So here we have a debate again among the Muslim scholars. Christianity has disappeared. You have no access to a real version of revelation. Islam has not come yet. Okay, are you sinful for doing shirk? Right? Are you sinful for doing shirk? Right? You were raised in the Amazon rainforest, deep in the Amazon rainforest. All you know of the world is that far, 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 far away, there are some people who live in a city. And you've heard of that once, but it's really far away and you've never been there. And one of your grandfathers once saw somebody from there. That was all. You don't know anything about Christianity, let alone Islam. And all you know is that basically, from the beginning of time, the tree god has helped your tribe and has helped your tribe against the other tribe. That's how you see the world. There's our tribe and their tribe, and the tree god is helping you against that tribe. That's it. And you worship the tree god by whatever, doing certain things. Are you sinful? You're an atheist, right? And you've never heard about Islam or anything. So if you're in a period of time where there is no revelation, or you have not been reached by revelation, are you sinful for doing shirk or atheism? Right? A debate. Ash'aris, they say no. The Ash'aris, they say, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we would never punish a people until we sent a messenger. So the messenger has not come, or the message has not reached you, khalas, you're not responsible. Right? So those who did shirk in the past, khalas, they're not responsible. Somebody today in the Amazon rainforest, not responsible. Right? As opposed to somebody who knows about Islam, that's different, right? And then we have the position of the Maturidis. The Maturidis, they say, no, look, it's true the mind cannot tell you how to worship Allah, but the mind can tell you that about Tawheed, and that's your Rasul, right? You have a brain, you know that the tree grows, okay, and therefore it cannot be God. You have a brain, you can look at the universe, but like this doesn't come out of nothing, right? That's obvious. So, um, so according to Maturidis, or anybody who does kufr, regardless whether they receive the message or not, if they don't believe in Tawheed, they're a kafir. If they're a Christian who was very devout and believed in the Bible and was told God died on the cross, and they said, yes, God died on the cross, they're a kafir and they're going to go to hellfire forever. Whereas for the Asharis, they say, no, 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 no. For the Asharis, they say, no, it's not like that. If the message didn't reach them, you know, certain periods in European history, and the message of Islam did not reach them, so khalas, they're not responsible, right? Does that make sense? But they do both agree that you could find Islam, you could find Tawheed through the mind, right? But that's considered for the Ashari, they call it tabarru, like you just that's an extra, like he kind of did an extra thing, as opposed to something else. Wallahu a'lam. And if you read the Quran, there's certain verses that give one sense, and certain verses give another sense. It's a genuine debate, right? Wallahu a'lam. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, Imam Nawawi, he's Ashari, but he had a kind of like a nuanced Ashari approach. He said, look, you are not responsible through the mind. The mind alone does not make you responsible. So, I mean, you could work out that Allah is one, work out that Jesus isn't God, etc., but that doesn't make you responsible. But Imam Nawawi made a claim, kind of anthropological, historical claim. He said, "It's true, but everybody has been reached by the message of Tawheed. Every single person on the face of the earth knows La ilaha illallah. There's no God but Allah. The universe has been created by an all-powerful, all-seeing God, and who is not like this and not like that." He said, so he makes that statement. So he said, people in the Jahiliyyah, they were kuffar and they will be in the hellfire forever, not because their mind told them that, that shirk was bad, but because of the ambient thing. Just like here we have Zayd ibn Amr. He's like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. Right? The ambient, widespread, general idea of monotheism. Does that make sense? So he kind of took it's still Ashari in a sense, but it's slightly tweaked. Does that make sense? Okay. And just again, I'm mentioning these words Ashari and Maturidi. Some of you will be familiar with this term, some of you not. So basically, since for the last 1,000 years, basically every kind of scholar is either going to be Ashari, Maturidi, or Hanbali. Hanbalis, they have the same aqidah as the Asharis and Maturidis, but they just phrase it in a different way. They use different kind of language, you know. Um, but they're the same thing, right? So that's basically until recently, and then with the the movement of Sheikh Muhammad Ibn Abdul Wahhab, you get what's called Wahhabi slash Salafi Aqidah. So that's kind of widespread today and promoted a lot. But traditionally, if you go from Spain to Malaysia to China, this is what you see Muslims are either going to be Ashari or Maturidi, and then you'd have some pockets of Hanbalis. But again, when you look at Hanbali Aqidah, it's the same. But they just phrase it in a different way. They use different kind of language, but it's the same kind of thing. Okay. And then a Salafi, the way a Salafi looks at themselves is Salafi say no. Basically, these Asharis and Maturidis, they took over the last 1,000 years, but they're all wrong. And so basically, a Salafi sees that majority of Muslims for the majority of Islamic history have all been off, and that there was like a few people here and there that had certain beliefs, and that's the real Sunni creed, right? So the Salafi methodology or the Salafi view in creed is very much like the Shi'i and Khariji mentality that most people have been astray for the most of Islamic history, right? So they'll say like, yeah, Imam Nawawi is off, and Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, and it's on this person. All these people are all off, right? They don't. So a Salafi sees that basically the whole of Islam has been hijacked for the last 1,000 years. That's why we have to go back to the Salaf. We have to basically go read the books that are written in the first, second, third century and just stick to that because Deen has been hijacked for the last 1,000 years by these people who follow the form of Dhahib or these people who are Ashari or Maturidi, right? So whether you agree or not, just historically, that's what it was. Last 1,000 years, you just bump into any Muslim scholar, he's going to be basically Ashari or Maturidi in Aqidah, and he's going to be Maliki, Hanafi, Shafi'i, Hanbali. That's how it is, right? That's what you're going to find. Whether it's right or wrong, or whether you agree or not, it doesn't matter, but that's just historically the case. Okay. So it says Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufail composed the following poem about his leaving people and treatment. So again, where's your source for this? Right. So Zayd ibn Amr, like, were you there when he left Shirk? Where's the source for this? There's no source, right? So I am to worship one Lord or 1,000. If there are as many as you claim, I renounce Lat and Uzza, these gods, both of them, as they as many strong-minded person would. I will not worship Al-Uzza and her daughters, nor will I visit the two images of Banu Amr. I will not worship Hubal, though he was our Lord, in the days when I had little sense. I wondered, for in the night much is strange, which in daylight is plain to the discerning, that God had annihilated many men whose deeds were thoroughly evil, and spared others through the piety of a people, so that a little child could grow to a manhood. A man may languish for a time and then recover, as the branch of a tree revives after rain. I serve my Lord, the compassionate, that the forgiving Lord may pardon my sin. So keep to the fear of God your Lord, while while you hold to that you will not perish. You will see the pious living in gardens, while for the infidels hell fire is burning. Shamed in life, when they die, their breasts will contract in anguish. Zayd also said, "To God I give my praise and thanks, a sure word that will not fail as long as time lasts. To the heavenly King there is no God beside beyond him, nor Lord can draw nor no, and no Lord can draw near to him. beware, O men, of what follows death. You can hide nothing from God. So some of these things you're going to find. Um, Yeah, where are these ideas coming from, heaven and hell? Where do they think about heaven and hell? Are these ideas from the past that they've kept, or are these Christian and Jewish ideas? So we have, for example, the famous Jahili poet Labid, right? He became Christian, and so here's some of his poetry talks about these things. Beware of putting us. Okay, anyway, basically this. So the question is, did he write this poetry? Who knows? Allahu alam. Zayd ibn Amr is in reproaching his wife Safiya said, hmm? Anyway, there's a whole story here. Okay, so that's his story there. Anyway, so he has all this poetry, and as you mentioned, what did we mention about Ibn Hisham and this poetry? What did Ibn Hisham? So Ibn Hisham, when he got the work of Ibn Ishaq, and he kind of like added some things to it, and he cut some things out. What did he say about some of the poetry in Ibn Ishaq? Can anybody remember? So Ibn Ishaq, he said, so Ibn Hisham, he said, when I was gathering this work of Ibn Ishaq from my teacher Bakai, we noticed a lot of the poetry sounded really weird. I showed it to people who are specialists in poetry, said, this is not real poetry. This is not poetry of that time. It's not pure. It's like nobody knew it. So he criticized a lot of these things. So I'm not trying to say all of it is wrong, but it's like, number one, we have no chain. Number two, we know that some of this poetry has already been um, what's it called? Like critiqued. Here it says now Al-Khattab, who I believe this is the father of Umar al-Khattab, right? Had so harassed Zayd that he forced him to withdraw to the upper part of Mecca and stopped in the mountain of Hira facing down the town. So you can imagine being saying Umar al-Khattab, right? Like your dad had to deal with those rebels who go against tradition, you know? So imagine you growing up like that. Oh yeah, my dad, those crazy guys who don't follow the real religion of our forefathers, right? They're crazy, kick them out. They're bad, right? Um, they gotta be, they're bad people, right? And so um does that make sense? So now you growing up with that, so now when you're gonna hear about Islam, you're gonna be like, yeah, oh, another one of those renegades, right? And I believe Al-Khattab was a qadi. He was he was a Um, so Al-Khattab gave instructions to the young, irresponsible men of Quraysh that they should not let him enter Mecca, and he was able to do so in secret only. When they got to know uh, of that, they told Al-Khattab and drove him out and harassed him because of their fear that he would show their religion in its true colors, and that some would join him in succeed in seceding from it. He said, making, and again, lines of poetry here, etc. So he then went forth seeking the religion of Abraham, questioning monks and rabbis until he traversed Al-Mosul, he went all the way to Iraq, and the whole of Mesopotamia. Then he went through the whole of Syria until he came to a monk in the high ground of Balqa. This is in Jordan. Right? There was a Wise University. Those who've heard of Wise University, that's in Balqa. I think there's two Balqas in reality. Here, there's a footnote here, Balqa as well. Yeah, the district of which Amman was the capital, right? Amman. So Al-Balqa. This man, it is alleged, was well instructed in Christianity. He asked him about the Hanifiya, the religion of Abraham, and the monk replied, "You are seeking a religion to which no one today can guide you, but the time of prophet will come forth from your own country, which you have just left, has drawn near. He will be sent with the Hanifi, the religion of Abraham, so stick to it, for he is about to be sent, and this is his time. Now Zayd had sampled Judaism and Christianity and was not satisfied with either of them, so at these words he went away at once, making for Mecca. But when he was well inside the country of Lacham, he was attacked and killed. Waraqa ibn Nawfal composed the elegy, right? Allahu Alam. So basically, the context that we want to understand is people are already, the soothsayers are already talking about a coming of a prophet. The Jews are talking about the coming of a prophet. And people are already questioning their own religion, right? It's not the only voice of dissent. The word applied to the apostle of God in the gospel. Among things which have reached me about the Jesus, son of Mary, stated in the gospel, which he received from God from the followers of the gospel, in applying a term to describe the apostle of God, is the following. It is extracted from John the apostle, set down for them when he wrote the gospel for them from the testament of Jesus, son of Mary, saying, quote, he that hateth me hath hated the Lord, and if uh, I had not done in their presence works which none other before me did, they had not had sin. But from now they are puffed up with pride and think that they will overcome me and also the Lord. But the word that is in the law must be fulfilled. They hateth me without a cause. But when the Comforter has come from God, but when the Comforter has come, whom God will send to you from the Lord's presence, the Spirit of truth, which will have gone forth from the Lord's presence, he shall bear witness of me, and ye also, because ye have been with me from the beginning. I have spoken unto you about this, and ye should not be in doubt. The Munahammana, God bless and preserve him, in Syriac is Muhammad. In Greek, it is the Paraclete. Right. So many people may have heard of this. Right. So this is, I don't know where this first started, but anyway, Ibn Ishaq has mentioned it, the Paraclete. Allahu Alam. So when Muhammad, the apostle of God, reached the age of 40, God sent him in compassion to mankind as an evangelist to all man. Right, Bashiran, right? Bashir, that's the word, he's using the word. Bashir is to give glad tidings. Now God had made a covenant with every prophet whom he had sent before him, that he should believe in him, testify to his truth, and help him against his adversaries. And he required of them that they should transmit that to everyone who believed in them, and they carried out their obligations in that respect. God sent to Muhammad, when God made a covenant with the prophets, he said, this is the scripture and wisdom which I have given you. Afterwards, an apostle will come, confirming what you know, that you may believe in him and help him. He said, do you accept this and take up my burden, i.e., the burden of agreement which I have laid upon you? They said, we accept. He answered, then bear witness, and I am a witness with you. Thus God made a covenant with all prophets that they should testify to this truth and help him against his adversaries. And he transmitted that obligation to those, and they transmitted the obligation to those who believed in them among the two monotheistic groups, i.e., so basically this is, so i.e., every single prophet prepped their people saying a prophet is coming. Tabari adds, one whom I do not suspect told me from Sa'id ibn Abi Aruba. So between Tabari and Sa'id ibn Aruba, there's quite a gap. I'm not quite sure how. So So here's Tabari. Tabari, I think he passed away in 310. So Sa'id ibn Aruba is like a century at least before that, if not a century and a half, right? Sa'id ibn Aruba. Um, like he's like mid Tabi'een or something like that. Or who narrates from Qatada ibn Di'ama as-Sadusi. So this is the student of Anas, Qatada ibn Di'ama. We see him in the six books all the time. Who narrated from Abu al-Jald. He said the Furqan came down on the 14th night of Ramadan. Others say no on the 17th. And in support of this, they appeal to God's words, and what we sent down to our servant on the day of the Furqan, and the day the two companions met, which was the meeting of the apostle and the polytheists at Badr, and that took place on the 17th of Ramadan. Az-Zuhri, so this is his teacher, right? The teacher of Ibn Ishaq, related to me from Urwa ibn Zubayr that Aisha, this is the connected chain, right? That Aisha told him that when Allah desired to honor Muhammad and have mercy on his servants by means of him, the first sign of prophethood vouchsafed to the apostle was true vision. So this we find in Bukhari Muslim, right? This is like right in the beginning of Bukhari, right? But we're going to see Bukhari's chain is going to be longer because Bukhari's after. Bukhari's like two generations after our author. So Bukhari, I think, narrates from Humaydi, something like that. From Sufyan ibn Uyayna from Zuhri. So between Bukhari and Zuhri, there's two people, right? Whereas our author is narrating directly from Zuhri. We're going to see this Zuhri is going to come up a lot. So he's super thiqa, he's super reliable, but most of his information that he's going to tell us in the Sira has no sources whatsoever. So if you can see this information like this, Zuhri said that Urwa Zubayr said that Aisha said that X happened, right? So the issue is, what if Zuhri just said X happened? No source from another no source from the event. So there's at least like two people, two gaps in the chain. Like we don't know what's happening. But we're going to see Zuhri a lot. So this is Ibn Shihab Zuhri. And that he true visions resembling the brightness of daybreak, which was shown to him in his sleep. And Allah, she said, made him love solitude so that he liked nothing better than to be alone. Right? This is very important, right? In us, in our week, in our life, we have to have times with people, and times with Allah, right? Ma'an nasi ahyanan, ma'allahi ahayin. We have to have quality time, right? If you think about a marriage, right? Here's a marriage, for example, husband and wife live in two different, countries. Do you think that's a healthy marriage? I mean, it could be a healthy marriage, right? But I mean, by default. What do you think, guys? Husband and wife live in two different countries for a
Things
long period of
become
time.
things become very difficult for them.
It's going to come very difficult, and you can imagine issues, things happen, right? You imagine that it's going to get rocky because you need to spend time together, right? Any husband and wife, for example, we're too busy with kids, spend quality time together. Too busy, everything's right. There's just we're just too busy. I'm working, she's working. This is this. Things happen in that marriage. This doesn't work, right? You need to have quality time, right? Similarly with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously, astaghfirullah, we're not married to Allah, but it's a relationship, right? If you don't have quality time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not going to work, right? It's not. You have to have that time. Like, where is the me and Allah time? Yes, you can be serving the community. Yes, you can be doing your work, but you need to have certain time in your day, in your week, in your month, right? We're just like, khalas, just need to be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just sit and talk to Allah, right? There's nothing and no distractions. So this was happening. Abdul Malik ibn Ubaidullah ibn Abi Sufyan ibn Ala ibn Jariyah, the Thaqafi, who had a retentive memory, related to me from a certain scholar, unknown, notice, right, that the apostle at that time willed to bestow his grace upon him and endowed him with prophethood, would go forth for this affair and journey far afield until he reached the glens of Mecca and the beds of its valleys, where no house was in sight, and not a stone or tree that passed would say And so when this happened, every single tree and every single stone would say to him, "Peace unto thee, O Apostle of Allah." The Apostle would turn to his right and left and look behind him, and he would see naught but trees and stones. Right? That's what he would see. So things started giving salams to him. Right? So also this what's it called? Latafa can happen, right, for normal people. So if you can think about it, right, if every single atom is saying Subhanallah, right, all the animals, all the trees are worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you could imagine somebody could be exposed to that, right? And so here it's just basically like, it's an issue of like how is it? Again, let's talk about like a family dynamic, like father's busy, wife's busy, right? The kid is trying to say something, but the mom and dad don't pick up on it, right? You know? And then there's like this kid's like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Everyone's just so busy. So there's this like kind of like you don't see things because you're busy, right? Something like spiritually, it's like you're just spiritually busy with something else. You don't see things that are kind of obvious. So somebody who has a lot of safa in their heart, their heart is busy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they can often pick up on things, like intuit things, you know? Like get the sense of how this tree is making dhikr, or get the sense of how, or the barakah of a place. You can get senses, right? It doesn't mean you're a prophet, doesn't mean this, doesn't mean that, but it's like a sense. You feel things, right? And so it's kind of like, you know, and you could become more attuned to this or less attuned to it, right? Um, just another example. Um, it was, it was funny. It was one Eid, and there's this brother comes and gives me a hug on Eid, and my wife's watching from afar, and she said that was not a normal hug. I'm like, what are you talking about? The guy just like give me a hug on Eid. He's like, no, that was not a normal hug, bro. And she like, so things like that. So people can be unaware, like things are happening, or things are kind of like odd, right? And like that guy is hitting on you, like, and you're like, she's like, no, what are you talking about? Like that guy is no, he's like saying things or whatever, like, and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that, right? So it's just like people unaware of like human communication. We're unaware of spiritual communication, and you can become more or less. So here the Prophet is becoming more and more and more, and it's like all of these things are like crying out like, Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, right? That's what's happening. And then, so again, could that happen to me and you? 100%. Not that, oh, this means I'm special. It doesn't mean anything, but it just means you're just in tune with stuff. Like, yeah, that's what's happening, you know? Because everything is like that. Like every single branch, every single leaf, every single animal is saying Subhanallah, right? And so you can kind of, even if you can't understand it, you can pick up on it, right? The apostle would turn to his right and left, etc. Thus he stayed seeing and hearing so long as it pleased that he should stay. Then Jibril came to him with the gift of God's grace while he was in Hira in the month of Ramadan. Wahab ibn Kaysan, the client, the freed slave, that's a term, client, meaning the freed slave of the family of Zubayr, told me, I heard Abdullah ibn Zubayr say to Ubaidullah ibn Umayr ibn Qatada, the Laythite, al-Laythi, right? O Ubaid, tell us how began the prophethood which was first bestowed upon the apostle when Gabriel came to him. And Ubaid in my presence related to Abdullah and those with him as follows. The apostle would pray in seclusion in Hira every year for a month to practice at-tahannuth. So again, this is all in Bukhari Muslim, right? Wahab ibn Qusay. So here, we're not, again, remind ourselves, Bukhari Muslim are 2 generations after this book, right? And the Apostle would pray in seclusion in Hira, and he'd practice at-tahannuth, which was a custom of Quraysh in heathen days. Tahannuth is religious devotion. Abu Talib said, by Thawr and him who made Thabir firm in its place, and by those going up to ascend Hira and coming down. Right? So he swore by the people used to do ibadah. Wahb ibn Kaysan told me that Ubaid said to him, every year during that month the apostle would pray in seclusion and give food to the poor that came to him. And when he completed the month and returned from his seclusion, first of all, before entering his house, he would go to the Kaaba and walk around it 7 times, or offer or as often as it pleased God. Then he would go back to his house until in a year when God sent him in the month of Ramadan, in which God willed concerning him that he willed of his grace, the apostle would set forth to Hira, as was his wont, as was his habit, and his family with him. When it was the night on which God honored him with his mission and showed mercy on his servants thereby, Gabriel brought him the command of it. He came to me, the Prophet ﷺ said, while I was asleep, with a coverlet of brocade whereon he was writing. And he said, so this is a different version, right? He has something that he's writing on. He said, read. And I said, what shall I read? He pressed me with it so tightly that I thought it was death. Then he let go of me and said, read. I said, what shall I read? He pressed me with it again so that I thought it was death. Then حتى بلغني الجهد, that's what you find in, I believe, in Bukhari, right? He got to the absolute, like, I'm actually going to die. What shall I read? He pressed me with it again so that I thought it was death. Then he let go of me and said, read. And I said, what shall I read? He pressed me with it a third time so that I thought it was death. And he said, read. I said, what shall I read? And this I said only to deliver myself from him, lest he should do the same again. He said, read in the name of thy Lord who created man of blood coagulated. Read, thy Lord is the most beneficent, who taught by the pen, taught that which they know not unto men. Right, he managed to make a poem there. So I read it and departed from him. I awoke from my sleep, and it was as though these words were written on my heart. So he is mentioning that he was asleep at the time. Now none of God's creatures was more hateful to me than an ascetic poet or a man possessed. I could not even look at them. I thought, woe is me, poet or possessed. I'm one of the two. I'm now somebody quoting random words, or I'm possessed. Never shall Quraysh say this of me. I will go to the top of a mountain and throw myself down, that I may kill myself and get rest. So I went forth to do so, and then, when I was midway on the mountain, I heard a voice from the heaven saying, O Muhammad, thou art the apostle of God, and I am Gabriel. So notice this. So we say, where's the source for this? He said, so basically, this is saying that right after Revelation, the Prophet ﷺ, here in Tabari actually. So in Tabari, Tafsir al-Tabari, it has this thing here that basically, being a prophet was such a weird thing that he thought, this is really strange. I'm not a weird poet saying random things, nor am I possessed. I'm going to commit suicide. Right? So we're going to say, let's go to Tabari and find the source. Right? It's actually not here, right? So this thing comes in other hadiths, that when he left, he said, lo, Gabriel in the form of a man with feet astride the horizon. And so in the form of a man, I'm not sure if that comes in the other narration. But certainly Jibreel appeared to him, filling the horizon, saying, O Muhammad, thou art the apostle of God, and I am Gabriel. I stood gazing at him. Tabari adds, and that turned me from my purpose, moving neither forward nor back. Then I began to turn my face away from him, but towards every region of the sky I looked, I saw him as before. And I continued standing there, neither advancing nor turning back, until Khadija sent her messengers in search of me. And they gained the high ground above Mecca and returned to her while I was standing in the same place. So this is interesting, right? It's not that he came to her, that she sent somebody to him. Then he parted from me, and I from him, returning to my family. And I came to Khadija and sat by her thigh and drew close to her. She said, Abu al-Qasim, where hast thou been? By God, I sent my messengers in search of thee, and they reached the high ground above Mecca and returned to me. And she says, I said to her, woe is me, poet or possessed. She said, this is Zamiluni. So this is different, right? We haven't seen that. That's not in that version. right? Where he's saying like, there's something wrong with me. So he there in that other version, he's saying something's going to happen to me, not I'm a weirdo, right? You see that difference? She said, I seek refuge in God from that, O Abu Qasim. God would not treat you thus, since he knows your truthfulness, your great trustworthiness, your fine character and kindness. This cannot be, my dear. Perhaps you did see something. Yes, I did, he said. Then he told her of then he told her then I told her what I had seen, and she said, Rejoice, O son of my uncle, and be of good heart. Verily, by him in whose hand is Khadija's soul, I have hope that thou wilt be the prophet of this people. Then she then rose and gathered her garments about him, and set forth to her cousin. Right, that's again some kind of reference to Zammiluni. Gathered her garments about her, sorry, and set forth. Uh, so what was she wearing then? So notice this, we talk about hijab, right? We say like, oh, hijab, Islamic. Hijab is not an Islamic thing. Hijab is a normal thing. So she's dressed at home, but when she leaves the house, she's more dressed, right? It's not like, oh, because she become Muslim. There's no verse of hijab yet, but this is just normal human beings. Normal human beings covered more, right? We live in a time where women are trying to expose as much as possible for certain reasons, right? But that's not normal. And set forth for her cousin Warqa ibn Nawfal ibn Asad ibn Abdul Uzza, etc. And we know the story from that. Inshallah, we'll continue next week. So this is interesting, right? If somebody can find that it's in Bukhari, right? This whole thing's in Bukhari. You can just compare the differences, and also look at the sources. So obviously that whole thing about trying to commit suicide, that's not even there at all. But it's not even this source. But if you look at the beginning here, he begins with here. This is the chain transmission he has. Wahb ibn Kaysan from uh, heard from Abdullah ibn Zubayr from Ubayd ibn Umayr ibn Qatada al-Laythi. And that's how it goes there. So try and find this in Bukhari and Muslim, and you can see that I'm sure you can find a whole English translation of the whole thing there. And just compare, it's kind of interesting. So I think thing I noticed was he doing that every year or was that in that month? Also, it adds that that's something that the Quraysh used to do. That's interesting, right? It's not just something that he did, it's something that Quraysh actually used to do. And then what else? And then um, the issue that Sayyidina Jibreel had something written on brocade, on fine silk, right? And also it mentions that he was asleep in the process, and then he woke up when Sayyidina Jibreel left, right? So this version tells us that Sayyidina Jibreel comes to him in a dream and not in reality, or at least that was what we could assume. Whereas the other version doesn't mention that he's asleep, right? Um, Also, the fact that has the interesting thing that they came to him, right? So anyway, have a look, inshallah. Maybe we can try and do a bit of an exercise. But this is how we Muslims function. Okay, there's information. We're going to label information in terms of strength. We're going to put it together. It's not just nebulously out there. This is a key thing we have to understand in our minds. It is sunnah. There's no such thing. It is sunnah. It's in this book. It mentions that it's sunnah, right? The story goes. Where does the story go? In this version, it goes like this. In this version, it goes like this. In that version, it goes like this. This is the source for this word. That's the source for that word. That's how we have to change the way that we think as Muslims, right? We live this life as a kind of like an observer of this nebulous kind of cloud called Islam. It's not a nebulous cloud. It's all get that cloud and put it into this book and this source and that source and these words and those words. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Inshallah. خير إن شاء الله. We'll stop here. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.